Welcome to Taking the Higher Road, a special show dedicated to the trucking industry, specifically at the confluence of recruiting, retention, and compliance. In the fourth year as the host of this show, I bring over 2 decades of industry experience, both on the carrier side as well as the vendor side. And each week I interview industry experts and thought leaders who bring their insights to the driver lifecycle as we discuss the industry's greatest challenges. I always appreciate your feedback, good or bad. Don't forget to rate and review Taking the Higher Road on your preferred platform. I'd also like to thank and highlight the show's valuable sponsors. Their dedication and commitment to the industry and to the show is greatly appreciated. If you're interested in being a sponsor of Taking the Higher Road or joining me for an interview, please send me an email at jeremy@takingthehigherroad.com. This week, I'm honored to be joined by an amazing woman with an amazing story who's quickly become a close friend of mine, Marina Ivanov, co-founder of Apex Transit LLC, 75 truck fleet based in North Carolina. Great to have you on the show, Marina.
Thank you, Jeremy. The pleasure is mine. Excited to be here.
Well, there's so much to talk about. First, as I said, you have an amazing story. I'm excited to share it with the audience. I love your grit, your passion, your energy. Perhaps we can start with your background and how you got started in the industry, leading to where you are today. I'd love to discuss the challenging environment we're all operating in, how you've had to evolve to, weather the storm. And you're very active and engaged in the industry. You're on North Carolina Trucking Association's board of directors. You're an advocate for trucking on Capitol Hill. We can talk about how that engagement has been beneficial for you personally and as a carrier. I'd love for you to share a little bit about Ukraine. I know it's been a tough couple of years, to say the least. And lastly, we'll answer a question from a listener during our deeper dive segment. Does that work for you?
Sounds great. Let's roll.
All right. Well, before we dive in, I am curious if you have any book recommendations for the audience, anything you've read that was impactful to you.
What a great question. I love reading. It's one of my favorite hobbies. I've enjoyed fiction for a long time, but lately I've just been devouring any kind of mindset books because I've been really focused on personal growth, and that translates into business as well. So one of my favorites that started the game was Mindset by Carolyn Dweck. Currently also listening to, or I just finished Stolen Focus, which is an incredible book about what the technology and how much focus we've lost over the last couple of years. Personal development book wise, Letting Go by David Hopkins is one of my absolute favorites. It's a great book on handling emotions, and a few more. Right now I'm listening to Eat That Frog, which is great about tackling. Have you read that one yet?
I haven't, but I'm familiar with the concept.
Yeah. I'm actually listening to that book with my kids in the car on the way to school and helping them understand that tackling your biggest task first thing in the morning is the best way to go.
Yep, get it out of the way. Those are some really good recommendations. I read Stolen Focus. The others I wrote down. I'm going to add them to my Goodreads list of books to read. And if we're not connected on Goodreads, we definitely should be. It's a great tool, and I appreciate that. I enjoy that you like to read and like books based on just personal growth. I think that's healthy, and I do this. I enjoy that as well. I feel like you personify the American dream with your story. If you don't mind sharing your background, and you and your husband both emigrated from Ukraine
Yes.
when you were younger. Can you maybe share about your background and then what attracted you to the trucking industry to start a small growing fleet?
Absolutely. Thank you, Jeremy. How much time do you have? Well, it's kind of a long story. I'll try to shorten it. But I immigrated to this country when I was 10 years old and my husband was 5. We met here in Charlotte, but my dad actually started as an owner operator in 2000. And we immigrated in 1998. This was an opportunity for him to make a living while he was still learning the language. And he was able to be successful in it for a long time. But I got to see firsthand what it's like to be a driver. I drove with him many times out west, from New York to Oregon to Washington, and had a lot of stories during that time. And I just noticed the amount of stress that he went through, the issues with hours of service, how they're some difficult for the drivers, and they have a lot of things against them to make it happen. And I just felt this, like, I don't want to be in this industry. I told myself I'll never be in trucking. And I was studying to become a dentist. I was a dental hygienist for several years. And life happened where during 2012, when our construction company, my husband's construction company, wasn't going so well, and we were struggling. And one of the things that we've always wanted, or my husband has always wanted, was to have his own business. And I wasn't on board because I just wanted to have an easy kind of like, I know trucking is not easy. So I got on board and wanted to support him. But lo and behold, I just fell in love with it. I started doing every step of the way, from safety to driver recruiting to accounting. I taught myself, I took accounting classes. I learned everything I could from recruiting, even listening to your podcasts or your webinars from the beginning on recruiting. That was one of the information that I got. So thank you for that.
Yeah, you grew to where you are today, a 75 truck fleet. I mean, I think that's tough in these times, and we'll touch on that here shortly. But tell me what got you started with your first truck? What was that like? How did that happen?
So, and my dad was our first owner operator for about a year. And then actually in 2014 in January, so we've got our 10-year anniversary this month of when we purchased our first truck. And we literally scraped up enough savings to purchase our first truck and then leased a trailer at like a crazy rate, because at that time we didn't have any credit to build up. But it was one truck 10 years ago, and now we've built it up to 75. I'm really proud of how far we've come. It hasn't been easy. There's been a lot of challenges. We learned from mistakes. But one thing I am proud of is the way that we treat our people and who we are as a company.
I'm going to want to unpack how you treat your people in a little bit, because I know that that's something about you. I mentioned earlier that I love your grit and your passion, but you also, what I've gotten to know you, also a very empathetic person, a very compassionate person, and I can imagine working for you. How valuable that is. And I think from a retention standpoint, I know that, that's something that has probably helped, keep your people there and behind you. But before we go there, I would like to share with the audience, just, full disclosure, Apex Transit is a customer of Driver Reach, the company I founded. And, Marina, you and I finally had the opportunity to meet in person last year at ATA's MC&E conference in Austin, Texas. And I remember talking then about the challenging environment that we were in the midst of. And it seems like we're still in the midst of it. It seems like we're always in the midst of it. Can you share how that's been for Apex? Like, how you've had to evolve and navigate through this period?
Absolutely. So we've had a tremendous amount of growth from 2020 and up until now. And at that time, luckily, there was a lot of freight and it was wonderful. Everybody was having fun. Whoever had a truck was happy. And we've seen a dramatic decrease in that starting in February of 22. Jeremy, this has been an unprecedented time. This last few 18 months have been very challenging for Apex. We have seen decline in the freight availability, and that has impacted us greatly. In that, there's certain lanes and procedures that we've built up that are no longer available, and now we have to figure out a different way. And what that has created for me is an opportunity for me to grow. I personally actually like this time because it's a very challenging time, and it has forced me to grow and to look at other options and to look at our policies, our procedures, and see where at Apex are we operationally efficient and where are we not, and how can we improve. In 21, I think anyone with a truck could have been successful. So this is the times that shows the companies that are truly dedicated to this industry that they are successful if they can get through this time.
It is a challenge. There's no question. It's been tough. And kind of to your point, looking internally, how do I make things better? And your involvement in the industry, I'm sure, also helps a ton. And I, both as a leader, right, inside and outside of your organization, I'm sure. I do want to talk about your drivers. They're having a tough time too, right? How are you engaging with them to ensure they feel heard and understand that kind of you're all in this together?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Well, we have different departments in terms of that. We have several drivers are paid based on the work performed and daily rate. So we have worked really hard to ensure that we don't cut drivers' pay and we don't reduce their livelihood, or that we don't ruin their livelihood. So a lot of our drivers are understanding of what's going on because we have been committed and loyal to them, and in turn, they have been loyal to us. We haven't, upped their pay like crazy to retain them when it was hot. We've been very consistent and steady, and we've continue to do that for them even when the freight has slowed down. And there's a lot of respect that happens when you do things like this. And our drivers I actually have a great team of drivers. I have a really, really good team. I'm proud of the folks who are part of Apex. I feel like I have the cream of the crop. We work really hard on our recruiting strategies and our retention strategies to make sure that we keep those drivers. And we just recently had a Christmas party, and the sentiment that we got with those drivers, that we're here with you through whatever you go through.
Yeah, that says a lot, but that says a lot about leadership too, right? Because that's a top-down thing. And that's what I meant when I referenced, compassion and empathy. Is it always comes across as real and genuine, and you get so much more from people when they know that you care.
I'm sorry. I really want to throw this out because this is important to me, is that my dad being a driver, my husband started off as a driver, and being the wife and the daughter I never drove myself, so I can't speak from my own personal experience, but I always saw it from a close perspective. And I'm passionate about our drivers because I see how they're treated. And my goal is to create a company in a place where they're respected and valued. And this is what I do on the bigger scale. Why my involvement is to create an environment where this industry of drivers can thrive, where we have new workforce coming in, and they have their basic needs met, and they can drive and continue this wonderful industry that we all love.
Well, speaking of, you are very active and engaged in the industry. I mentioned that you're on the NCTA board. And you attend, Call on Washington. You've, different industry events. Can you share how being an active leader in the industry has helped you as a fleet for Apex and also individually?
Yeah, absolutely. I have grown and learned so much as being involved. I am very passionate about this industry because it has allowed us to live the American dream. There's very few places where you can just show up with a dream, scrape up a little bit of money, buy a truck, buy a few more, and build up a company just on grit and determination alone. We didn't have a business degree. We don't have a logistics degree. I didn't have anyone. I didn't start working anywhere in logistics to help us with it. Everything we learned ourselves. And so this is an industry where people come in and can build something great if they want to. And I want to try to preserve it and help it grow as much as I can. That's why I'm involved in both on the state level and the national level. I love doing our calls in Raleigh. This is where we get to speak with our elected officials and get to tell them what works and what doesn't work. There are several, recently I was just quoted with the Tar Heels article on the Modern Clean Truck Act, which would basically eliminate the excise tax. I'm not sure if you're aware, but every new truck that we purchase has a 12% excise tax that was established during World War I to help fund the First World War. We won that war. We don't need this tax anymore, but it continues to create a financial burden for trucking companies to purchase newer trucks. And so now there's a lot of issues with emissions and EPA, and where we could utilize, anyway, sorry, I'm going off a tangent, but this is, as you can tell, I'm very passionate about it. If we can just get newer trucks on the road, repeal this tax, we can actually help the environment and help the truckers out there who can have newer equipment that's more ergonomically developed, that is easier to drive, that has better systems in place. So that's what I'm working on currently with our state level and our national level, where we want to, that's on the table now. We're talking about repealing this tax, where before it was like, that's impossible. But now that we're adding the environmental piece to it, more and more people are coming to the table, and it's becoming a bipartisan issue. Sorry, I went on a tangent.
I love it though, because the point is being involved is what opens your eyes to what's going on out there. And as you know, and people say this all the time, if you don't have a seat at the table, you're on the menu. It's important to have a seat at the table, and you get it. And that's why showing up, attending, being engaged and involved is you're taking your seat. Now, I'm curious, in an industry that is predominantly male, do you feel that being a female leader has been an advantage or a disadvantage for you?
That's a great question, Jeremy. I actually had a whole article about this with Volvo Trucks. They just recently featured Apex as one of the things that we talked about was diversity. And this is something that I've actually had a lot of time to think about recently. And to tell you the truth, I started off feeling like that was a disadvantage. I I had a lack of confidence where I didn't think that anyone would take me seriously being a woman talking about trucks. And I was very wrong and learned later on that that could be actually a superpower. But I would hide behind my husband's email and LinkedIn where I would send messages from his profile when I was trying to reach out to prospective customers. And it took me a long time. It took a lot of growth. It took a lot of involvement in the association for me to see that I do have a lot to offer, especially when it comes to the driver retention and the culture building of the company.
It started off as a disadvantage, but now you recognize that it's a superpower.
And I'm starting to believe that more and more. And I think it's just more of the fact that we all have our strength. You know, it's not one is better than the other. We're all, I wouldn't say that's equal, but I would say that it's equal, but different at the same time. I don't know how to explain it, where everyone has their different strength. And my strength is more on relational building, where I love to hear people's stories. I love to talk to people. And to me, there's a sense of equality in all. Everyone deserves respect, whether it is my customer or it is my driver. It's the same. The way I talk to my driver is the same way that I talk to my customers. So it's not one is higher or better than the other. And that comes from being a female. We see folks are more in the linear fashion, where sometimes the male perspective has a hierarchical viewpoint, and not always, but that's typically how it is. So that's where I think the superpower comes from, the way that we're able to see everyone on the same level and treat everyone with the same level of respect.
Well, I think that you, as a woman in the industry, as in a male-dominated industry, I do think that it is an advantage personally. And again, I'm looking at this through a different lens. But that said, I think that when you are smart, assertive, engaged, you care, it really doesn't matter, male or female. People just want to work with people they know and trust, and you certainly come across that way. And I do want to switch gears a bit and talk about Ukraine. As I've shared with you, and now I'll share with the audience, I've got employees in Ukraine and have been very close with them for 10 years. They're family to me. I love them. And it hurts when I see what they're going through. Thank God they're safe, at least so far. But that could certainly change. And they've all lost loved ones during this invasion. You and your husband are from Ukraine. You have family there. How has the past 2 years been for them? And how are you coping with this ongoing dilemma?
Jeremy, it's been really heavy. The first few months when we found out, I was distraught. I was worried. I was constantly on the phone. I have folks near Odessa, my cousins, and then my aunts and uncles on the mom's side. They all live there. And recently, we've had 5 families immigrate to the U.S. and Canada to escape the invasion because it was coming closer and closer to home. One of the towns that I used to go to vacation in the summer near the sea has been invaded, and it just gets really close to home, and it breaks my heart to see what's happening. And it's been hard. Thank you for asking, and thank you for caring.
Well, it's hard not to, because, like I said, they're family to me, and so and in honor of you and your heritage, I'm wearing my Slava Ukraini shirt. And I did share with you that my whole family has become fans of the Ukrainian band Boombox.
I love that
we
band.
started listening to them shortly after the invasion. Yes.
That's so cool.
I have no idea what they're saying, but the music is cool. I really like it.
I'll translate for you. It is very cool. It's not... Yeah.
Well, I was going to say, do you get a sense that we're nearing the end of this freight recession? Or, where are we? It always seems like it's 6 months out, no matter where you are, right? It's 6 months out. What's your prognostication for 2024? What do you think? What are you seeing?
Another great question. I love this one. I'm the eternal optimist, very optimistic. I also believe that at any time, like even in the tough times, there's always people who are doing well, and I want to be one of those people. And I am the cheerleader also in the company. So whenever there's these bad weeks, guys, it's just 1 week. I've been saying that for a long time. Things can turn around at any point. But what I see from, I think it's going to be a little bit longer than we thought, but from all the resources that I've been reading and looking into, it seems like probably the second quarter, by the end of the second quarter, we'll see a turnaround. Is that kind of what you're seeing? What are your thoughts?
I hope you're right. I don't know if turnaround seems an aggressive word. Maybe bottoming and then like at least knowing that it's not going to get worse, or at least feeling that, I think is that's a glass half full, perspective, I think. And I think that's what I continue to hear and see, but we have to keep, our finger on the pulse and stay focused.
I very much agree with you on that one. And I think we'll never see the COVID years again. That was very just wild, the swings. I think we'll just normalize and stabilize, and we'll go back to kind of how it was, the minor ups and downs, but not as intense. So,
yeah, that's okay. That's okay. That's a little bit more predictable. Being that we only got a minute or so left, this is a good opportunity to get into our deeper dive question, which is a question submitted by a listener. The question is, I'm finding that keeping our best drivers busy so they stay here is more important than recruiting new drivers. Am I alone in feeling this way? That sounds like a retention question. What are your thoughts on, say, maybe, hey, do you agree and do you value retention maybe over just replacing?
Absolutely. I 100% agree with that. And that's the focus at Apex. There's such a value in getting to know your drivers and keeping the same ones. I love seeing the drivers that I've hired in 2019 come through the door. I can come in and say, give them a hug. How was your vacation? How are your kids? How's your son doing in college? That personal one-on-one that you can build up with your drivers where they feel valued. They feel like they have a work home and that they're appreciated there is so huge. And that goes a long way. Every time you hire a new driver, you run the risk of not knowing what their safety behaviors are. A lot of times things are coachable. It is better to work with the drivers that you have than just churn and burn, and hope the next one's better because you don't know what's going to come through the door. It's better to keep the ones that you have happy. That's my motto.
That makes sense. And I thank you for that take. And again, thank you so much for joining us today, Marina. I really appreciate your grit, your passion for the industry, and I'm honored to be your friend. I wish you and Apex Transit a prosperous year ahead.
Thank you, Jeremy. I'm honored to be your friend as well. I'm so glad we had this conversation, and I hope there's more to come.
Thanks for joining me for another episode of Taking the Higher Road. Stay tuned next week as Chris Henry, Chief Operating Officer at KSM Transport Advisors, joins me as we discuss how some of the best fleets are operating and navigating through these challenging times. And once again, special thanks to the sponsors of the show. We really appreciate you. If you're interested in being a sponsor of Taking the Higher Road or joining me for an interview, please send me an email at jeremy@takingthehigherroad.com. And lastly, don't forget to rate and review Taking the Higher Road. And please share or forward to your industry peers. Until next time, thank you for taking the higher road. Залишились